Well, hello everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good everything wherever in the world you are. It's so wonderful to be speaking across the timelines. Um, wow, I think as a little kid, if I ever imagined this was going to be my reality growing up, I think I would have been super excited actually. Because I have to tell you, I just dreamed of being in America. Jimmy Osmond was my favorite. You people don't know who Jimmy Osmond is, do you?
Osmond?
Jimmy Osmond
Osmond,
was
like
the
Maria and Donnie Osmond? Like,
yes,
yeah, I know them.
he was the baby brother. He was the baby brother, and I had like a serious crush on him. I got to tell you, I was convinced I'm going to America and I'm marrying Jimmy Osmond.
My dharma. My dharma. Shadu, anyway. I would become a Mormon just to marry him. So
I was totally obsessed. It's hilarious, actually, with that song of his long-haired lover from Liverpool. I won't sing it because I've got the most atrocious singing voice. But that was my song. The long-haired lover from Liverpool. Have I frozen?
Yeah, it's okay though. You're not frozen now.
No.
Well, like you're kind of frozen now. Okay. Knock on wood.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa with magical, mythical, monstrous BRICE. Yeah, the mystery indeed. I see things are happening on the internet today. Crazy, really. But before we go ahead, I would love to just, again, give a shout out to our sponsor for this month, the month of August, is Marushka.com, who is our amazing linen lady. She has this range of linen clothing, Marushka.com, and we're going to play an ad in the middle of our talk as well, just showing you stuff. But I'd just like to just do a little read something here, because what we're going to be doing today is looking at the production house where Marushka's clothes are produced. In a small factory in Cape Town by an amazing guy called Malik. I had the privilege of meeting them and going around there and just seeing her whole operation, which is really, really, really amazing. And you're going to see in the advert how he actually works it in a production house. Nowadays there's such a market. The big factories in Cape Town, I don't know if it's the same overseas as well, but I'm definitely finding Cape Town was like the capital of the fashion industry a few years ago, and it still is. But they had big, massive factories, and now there seems to be definitely they're smalling down, narrowing down, and that's not the right word, minimalizing. So so there's the smaller factories with a more niche market. So Marushka basically looks on the niche factories, focus on artisanal clothing. Less is better, and that's the whole focus of Marushka.com as well. And I'd love to also mention that all Marushka's, all the patterns of the linen clothing, she actually develops and creates everything herself. From its own development, patterns, grading, trials, and the first samples up to the point where she hands them over to Malik. So she cuts I wouldn't say she cuts everything, but she does everything until she sends it over to Malik. So each of these items of clothing are literally handcrafted and handmade, and there's a limited edition, call it that way. So very proud to actually call this lady my friend. I've known her for many years. And as I said, we'll be doing a little ad in the middle of the show. But in the meantime, so hello, welcome to Morné, as always. Trusty guy, whether he's in the front or the back, he's always there. How are you doing?
Always. Always.
Morné.
Even when I go to bed, I'm there. Trust me.
Yeah.
That needs to be a t-shirt. Whether in the front or the back, he's always there.
Exactly.
A t-shirt.
Everything needs BRICE wants a t-shirt in everything. Like every
Sure did. Yeah.
And we could have our own range of t-shirts one of these days, that's for sure. Who said one t-shirt was enough anyway? Definitely not us. We like choice and we like variety, right? So that's a good thing. But anyway, really happy to have you two ladies, Bryce and Stephanie, back, where we're going to be talking about actually part 3, but the second part of the BITE model, which is a kind of programming model. If you guys haven't watched the previous recordings on this, I highly recommend that you do. We did one last week with Bryce and Steph, and the week before with Steph, where we kind of covered it generally, which was great. And now we're kind of going into it in bite-sized chunks. So last week we bit into the B, which is all about behavioral control that is often used in churches and corporations and these places, and literally the subtle mind control that is involved in our systems all over. So today we're going to be talking about the I in BITE and its information control. So I would love to hear from you ladies about how that works. So over to you.
Well, and I do want to clarify too that yes, a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is going to be referenced back to the church, because I think that's kind of the common denominator that we've all had in our lives, where something very obvious in the past has used tactics from the BITE model to try to control you. But I also want to remind people that we're also, this time in our timeline, you can see the BITE model being used by the media, by the educational institutions, by medicine. I mean, hello, like all sorts of different, it doesn't have to just be religious institutions or spiritual institutions that are using the BITE elements of the BITE model to control people. It's not like cult leaders are sitting there using the BITE model as a checkoff list to make sure they're controlling you. This is just over a long period of time, people who are, especially one particular man who studied mind control, kind of developed this BITE model. And the reason why I think it's important for us to be looking at this, because part of this great awakening is us finding our sovereignty, is being able to form our own opinions, is to be liberated, right? The God that I believe in, the source God creator that I feel within me, is a God of liberation, not of control. And so Lucifer is of control, but not the source God that created our world, created us, that we are fractals of. It's all about liberation. And so if you're in a situation, especially spiritually, we see it more often because spirituality is where vulnerability exists, right? We're vulnerable when we go seek out. A lot of times every single human being on this earth has the propensity at some point in their life to fall into a cult. Even though we don't think we would ever do that, when you're in that really vulnerable place, that's when these institutions can kind of snag you, right? And these spiritual, religious can snag you in that vulnerability. And so we want to really push this forward on a lot of different channels so people can start to look at this stuff, ask their own questions, their own critical thinking skills with stuff they're involved in, and start to find their own sovereignty. And with that being said, Morné, can I share a screen so I can pull this up again for the audience to see as well? All right.
Yes,
Screen, and you want to go to this? Tab. Yes.
Yeah, while we're thinking of that, anything when it comes to control is the opposite of God to me, because when you think control, God is nothing about a control. God is expanding. God is this like flow of creativity. I don't even think God's will be done, but it's not a control thing. It's more like a expression, and
it's an experience.
Like, it will just happen. It will just happen.
And I quote Shanti a lot. I actually quoted it with you the other night. We were having a heart-to-heart. And I said, as Shanti says, we came here to learn what we're not. And to learn that, the key word there is to learn. To learn. How do you learn? You learn through experience. And so if you're here on this earth and you've been put in a box and you can't do this or you can't do that and you're so controlled, you're not having these experiences, right? You're not allowed to have the opportunities to learn. Right. Well, I say that people who've come from a cult like you kind of went to that through the Christian cult. You have a lot of experience now to be able to now speak on this because you've been there. You've been to the depths of fear because of the BITE model, because of behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. And so I think I put it up on the screen, the whole graph there, because we're going to be covering I today, which again is information control. I mean, hello, that's a big one for the last 2 years with the certain, thing that happened in 2020, and how many of us have been put in Facebook jail because we shared conflicting information versus, hello, like that. How big of an obvious tick is that on the BITE model with information control? So you want to take it here?
Sure. So the first bullet in information control is deliberately withholding and distorting information. And so we have seen this in the media. We've seen this with what you just talked about on social media. They were not allowing us to put the actual facts and information. Instead, we were deemed crazy and told that we're putting out disinformation when it's actually fact. If we're looking at the church part of this, we can see that in the missing books of the Bible. They removed these books for a reason. There's a reason why you're demonized by your pastor, saying you are not to read the missing books of the Bible. Who is to say what is accurate and what is not accurate? That should be up to the individual to determine what they believe in. So we do see this oftentimes. In education, our history books are completely rewritten. And it's all regarding an agenda. And it's what their narrative, the controllers, what the narrative that they want us to believe. But when you're in a cult, they withhold the information and deliberately distort the information so you believe in one and only one thing. And so they can start to mind control you and manipulate you. You have to add to that at all?
Well, also, I mean, when I was digging into the grimoires, which are the spell books that were taken out of the Bible, I found the Moses tablet. And the Moses tablet, from what I gathered from my research, now it's been hidden. That when they found the Moses tablet, they immediately took that sucker and hid it in the basement of the Cairo Museum. Why? So the information I got was from the few people who've actually read the Moses tablet. Why did they hide it? Because it contradicts everything written in the Bible about Moses. It says Moses was a worshiper of multiple demons. He was summoning demons. He was doing black magic. It confirms that he stole the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which they called the Egyptian Book of Bringing Forth the Light, which is where we get the 10 Commandments from. It basically goes and says everything is inverted. It was the Egyptians who worshipped one God. It was the Egyptians who were following the path of liberation. And it was this group of people following Moses that were wizards and warlocks that were doing all this hooboo-doobu stuff, as I've learned up, know. And so when you find that and you see that and you're like, oh my God, well, we know that the Bible says the Elohim. Well, what are the Elohim? We know from the grimoires, some Elohim were good, but a lot of them weren't. So they were worshiping multiple, what that tells me, whether you believe the Elohim are good or not, that's multiple deities, right? That's different than what they want to tell you in the churches, which we know the churches are also controlled by the controllers. Look at the money going up to the seminary school. So there's information control too. So they're hiding. So you don't have the opportunity, if you haven't seen the Moses tablet versus the Old Testament, you don't have that opportunity to have critical thinking skills to see one argument and another argument. Instead, you're trained through fear tactics, through mind control, through a lot of what we talked about last week, behavior control, to demonize people who are actually questioning and actually reading these things. Hello, we've been demonized. We've been told we were going to hell multiple times just for simply researching. How many times have I had to say research is not witchcraft? We're just researching. But that shows you the level of mind control and programming that's come through the withholding of information. And then the fear tactics, because that was happened to you big time, didn't it? It was like, if you dare to challenge this, if you dare to challenge what I'm telling you as a church, you're going to hell. Well, I'm sorry, my friends, a human being has no right to determine where your soul goes next. Mm-hmm. They have no power, no power. Your relationship with God is between you and God, no one else. But they scare you into submission. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I totally agree with you there, Bryce, in terms of that, because it's such a, when you look at anything, I mean, I am a jealous God. Anyone who says God is a jealous God has not understood that God so loved creation and God's self and all of creation that God was absolutely prepared for humanity to express itself in any which way it chose, knowing we were coming back home again, knowing that those dark, negative experiences that we experience under the law of Satan, so to speak, okay, are really just human experiences, experiencing what happens in the absence of light. So when we're in the dark, it really is when we've lost our light, when we've lost our connection to Source Creator. We feel that we have no option but to steal or to kill for something. You know, we have lost the ability to remember that everything we need resides within us. All it means is us tuning in and being willing to receive, and then finding our ways automatically guided to people and situations that complement that.
Yeah. It's all polarity. To understand the darkness, you must understand the light. To understand the light, you must understand the darkness. And it's like the womb. We grow, even though there's a spark of light in the womb, when the sperm hits the egg, there's that spark of light. But that being then starts to develop in the womb, which is dark, from that spark of light.
I want to say something which is recent, and I've said it a few times, but it's, you know, regarding the church. And this is something that has really just sort of dawned on me. You know, when we look at the church, we talk about the church being infiltrated. And I'm going to go, no, let's take that out of the equation. Let's look at the most powerful organization, church on this planet. It's the Vatican, right? Mm-hmm. Vatican owns everything. Mm-hmm. Vatican is head of the churches. The Vatican is also, when you look at the audition room, it's the head of the serpent. Mm-hmm. So we know that the Vatican is really the seat of Satan, so to speak. Now, let's think about this. Who decided what should be in the Bible?
Constantine. Vatican. Yeah, well, yeah.
Now, the church has not been infiltrated. The church, the Vatican, is the infiltrator.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I always say everything that they tell us to do when we know they're shady as hell, we just do the opposite of.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely.
So I would stay very fucking far away from any Bible that resembles anything the Catholic Church tells you to read. So whatever the Catholic Church Bible is, I would definitely get rid of it.
Well,
because you got to. Sorry, carry on.
Honestly, it's all Bibles at this point, because if you look at the King James Bible, it was they were totally rewritten, because King James was part of the club, and he admitted it. Like, he was very open about his taste in his, we'll say, his sexual partners, to be very careful about what we're saying. They were not consenting adults, we'll put it that way. This is all recorded, and he got rid of the Geneva Bible. The Geneva Bible was the actual first wide Bible that was really put together with English translations and all this kind of stuff. And all the Apocryphon books were in there. And King James ripped it and basically said no. And he had the Freemasons edit it. Every single Bible you have today, whether it's the NIV, whatever different versions, all spawned from the King James Bible. I tell people this all the time. You have never seen the actual Bible. People watching right now, you've never seen the real Bible. You've never seen it.
That's the point, though, isn't it? Because whatever they put in the Bible, and whatever the Catholic Church is advocating as the book of God that we have to read, I'm going to say that is tainted. So if you've got anything that resembles a Bible of any denomination, but it resembles what the Catholic Church or the Vatican or anything is saying, I'd say run, because they've taken those books of the Bible out, they've hidden them in the Vatican. And they're telling us.
I want to pitch in here. I just feeling, I like sometimes to be the devil's advocate, but right now I feel like God's advocate coming in. God just told me something and I had a little giggle about it. It's like I said earlier, God's will be done. And they use the truth, inverted, manipulated a little bit, but somehow, even with the Bible, a lot of good also happened. people do find their way to God. It's like God making the devil do his work. It's like, okay, you think you're gonna manipulate that? It's fine. You do what you think you gotta do. I already gave my will, and my will be done. So it's all in line. And I know that's just like God has a way of bringing truth even with untruth. And if we could see beyond I mean, when I grew up, I read the Bible when I was very young, very much in line with God. Not a lot of indoctrination. When I read the Bible, I didn't see the shit. I only saw the good. And right now it's like, actually, did the Bible say that? I read the Bible 3 times. I never understood or read that part of the Bible, although I read through it. My mind only absorbed the good. So what I'm trying to say is God will even use that.
Isn't that part of the deception, though? Sorry, we've got a lag here, guys, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject. But isn't that part of the deception? Because, of course, they've got to make it look all delightful. And, of course, there's beautiful stories in the Bible. They're not stupid. They're going to make it look and very, very spiritual and very amazing. But at the end of the day, what is the real intention? And it's limited information, and that's the thing. They're limiting the information, and they have edited it to their version so that it suits their narrative, and they can push it where they want to. And yes, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that is fear-based, which I don't always agree with. I love the teachings of the Bible generally. They're beautiful. And I love the teachings of Jesus the Christ. They're beautiful, but there's always that. And that's what we've got to be careful of now, because, again, this is the time. And that's why I say there's stuff that's in front of our face that we must just see. Why would the Catholic Church even push that Bible? So if the Catholic Church pushes whatever their Bible is, and a whole lot of these other denominations as well, I would be seriously wary. I'm going to obviously take the good out of that, but I'm going to say, there's so much more than this. Understanding how the information, the information limitation works. So, yeah, I think it's we just got to keep.
I didn't notice that until I started to wake up, and then when I saw what was happening, because we don't, as normal human beings, we don't think about these rituals on it. Like, we don't even know that before this, we didn't even know human beings were capable of doing this stuff. But then if you go back and look at the book of Leviticus, it's all there. When you look at Abraham and his son, Isaac, was it Isaac?
Yeah, I believe so.
Isaac, like that always bothered me as a child, that he was going to willingly sacrifice his son. And I remember it still triggers me to this day. I had a youth pastor when I was a teenager, and somebody asked him about that. Would you sacrifice your son like Abraham was asked to do? And my youth director said, yes. He said, if God came down and told me to sacrifice my son, I would.
Oh, my God.
And that has bothered me since I was a teenager. So how indoctrinated are you? And so when people, we know that one of my favorite memes is like when people say they're spiritual, they need to be specific, because demons are spiritual too. So if you think God's talking to you and tells you to sacrifice, you said this too, and I agree, Shanti, like I hear spirits, I see spirits. None of them have ever asked me to do anything that would ever hurt or infringe on another person's free will. And I know that if that ever happened, that's not a good spirit. Mm-hmm. I know that. But these people, when you withdraw and when you withhold information from people, and you block off the capacity of critical thinking skills to go, wait a minute, would a loving God actually do that? Especially when we now know what the other side of this does for shits and giggles and their rituals, that they just are flaying up particular meats. Now that we are aware of that and we look back at the story of Abraham, things look a little different now. Mm-hmm. And so if you hear God telling you to sacrifice your child, maybe you'll be like, hold up, this is not the God I serve. But in that situation, when I was a teenager, hearing my youth pastor say that was like a gut punch. That a parent, even as a teenager, when I was nowhere near responsible enough to be a parent, I felt that, like, why would a parent do that to their child? Yeah. There's bad parenting, and then there's real bad parenting. And I think when you're doing that to your kid, that classifies as real bad parenting. So
bad parenting, yes. I would not. And the thing is, we understand as well, now that we know what we know, the Lucy's require blood sacrifice. Mm-hmm. God created doesn't. You know, it doesn't. So the minute that I truly believe the minute we are asked to hurt or harm another, or in that way, then it's not coming from God. Really, it's not coming from God of love.
I mean, I get upset when I see trees cut down. And I live in a city, and I get upset when I see trees cut down. Like, I couldn't imagine doing that to a higher density consciousness of person, or that's infringing on someone's free will, you know? And that's all with information control. It's not saying that you don't have to believe the Bible. It's just you have to understand where you're being controlled. And if you're in a church or any type of religion that's not allowing you to actually just read a missing, what harm comes of reading a missing book of the Bible? It's just reading a book. What harm comes from that? But if they're telling you not to do that, that's information control. That's cult-like behavior. That's not okay. Not okay. And then you have, and I think I said before, it's if you're in cognitive dissonance, you cannot be critically thinking. They can't exist together. Critical thinking skills, discernment, and cognitive dissonance cannot exist together. What is cognitive dissonance? It's hearing or seeing the truth, but believing the lie. Right? You see a lot of cognitive dissonance in a lot of religious circles. You see cognitive what do we call them? The branch Covidians over here in America, the Covidiots, the people who believe in the fairy tale, the we'll call it the flu fairy that comes around. They're in cognitive dissonance because our population actually grew in 2020. So that's a good example of cognitive dissonance outside of religion. Totally. You know?
Totally. I mean, we just got to see what's happening here at the moment in the last 2 years as well. How many people just at the mere idea of seeing what's happening around them and what's literally been happening underneath their feet for so long, they can't see it. They don't want to look. Can't believe it. It's like, no.
Yeah,
people like you see that out.
And we're labeled crazy. We're labeled by the mainstream world. Those of us that actually did the research and looked up at the particular websites that carry statistics, those of us who actually researched what was in this and actually informed ourselves, used our critical thinking skills, we're labeled crazy conspiracy theorists by the media. Same thing with the church. Those of us like myself and Stephanie and you guys who are reading the missing books of the Bible, challenging the narrative, we're labeled witches. And we're labeled all sorts. We're going to go to hell because we're actually educating ourselves and looking at everything. It is comical.
I think it's comical at this point.
It is comical at this point.
And the more that people call me these names, the more I'm going to put out because it just it lights me on fire to get things out there because I'm not going to let another person's opinion of me distract me from my mission on Earth.
Yeah.
And let's remind we always say about the other side, feelings aren't facts. We say that to the other side of the people fighting us, thinking we're crazy because we've researched this. We always say, feelings aren't facts. But I can say that to people too on our side who are indoctrinated into a religion, whether it's Christianity or Islam or whatever. Feelings aren't facts.
Yeah.
Your emotional feeling and your ties to a particular book is not the facts. If you want the facts, you have to look at everything. You have to research everything.
Get every single perspective, and then you take that time to decide what you believe in.
And settle into it and acknowledge where maybe some of your emotional attachments are being maybe challenged by facts. And then for me, and I've said this on Zublik's show, doing the missing books of the Bible, going deeply, it has not hindered my relationship with God. In fact, it has made my relationship with God so much stronger. Mm-hmm. My faith in God and my love of God and my feeling of God's presence has gotten, and I've always felt the spirit world, always, but it has gotten so much stronger since I've been going on down this road. And I feel my faith and everything's going to be okay, even when it's crazy, has gotten stronger. I feel the presence more of angels, and because I'm seeing things clearer. I'm seeing things clearer because I'm taking the time to educate myself. And that is, if I had not broken free of information control, I wouldn't be in this position now. And I love God so much. I mean, there is not a force of love greater than the true God. And the true God doesn't give a shit whether you're reading the Bible or not. I'm going to tell you that right now. He's not limited.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Wow.
Right. So
that's
the next
amazing.
bullet point is forbidding you to speak with ex-members and critics. So I can't tell you how many times I was told by a certain organization, the church, sorry, don't speak to somebody who is a non-believer, or you have to kind of preach your testimony to them, and if they deny Jesus Christ, you should not speak to them. Also, too, many organizations and cults, they will kick people out that go against the leader or the narrative belief system. And so you are forbidden to not talk to those people. And that's actually happening in our truther community, in certain parts of it, unfortunately. And
there's a side of our truther community that's getting very cult-like.
Yeah,
I'm not happy about it.
There's several people, they're going to kick you off their Telegram channel because you ask about Tartaria.
Yeah.
Or you ask about the missing books of the Bible. Or you ask about anything that they're still entrapped in their own cognitive dissonance. They're going to kick you off their Telegram channel. That is not, I mean, what is this showing us? This is showing us that we still have a lot of programming to deprogram from. That is not right. You should not be kicking somebody out of a group
because they question something.
Yeah.
And Tartaria is the most fabulous information to ever be released in this Great Awakening. It means we're going into the Ascension, not Gog and Magog. And I know that, there's a truther out there that I've done shows with before. I really like her, but she's very indoctrinated into the church. And somebody told me that they had asked about Tartaria, and she got kicked off for asking about Tartaria. That's information control.
There was not even a discussion about it. It was just kicked out for asking about it. And that's not good. That's not good at all. That's still being conformed into a box of, you must obey this you either have to pick this narrative or that narrative. This is our narrative in the truther community. If you stray outside of our narrative, then you're kicked out. That's what the other side is doing. Yeah. And you're stooping down to their level. So that's not good. We shouldn't have rigid thinking. We really need to start thinking. What did you say? There's no black and white thinking.
There's no black and white thinking in the psychology world. Black and white thinking is considered a mental disorder, borderline personality disorder, mixed with narcissism, which is one of the hardest personality disorders to treat. And so if you feel yourself going rigid, I do that to myself all the time. If I feel myself going rigid, I remind myself that I'm going into unhealthy territory mentally. And I need to pull back, and that life exists in the gray. There's always gray.
We all can get very rigid about thinking, because it's our programming. And that's what we're learning in this Great Awakening, is we need to start breaking away from that programming. And we need to start looking at all different perspectives. And if you're reacting to another person's perspective with anger and violence and
name calling,
and shaming people and demonizing people, you really need to start looking within and doing some inner work, because you're projecting.
Yeah, it's fear. When we get to rigid thinking, sometimes we're in a place of fear. And so that's whenever I find myself going that way, and I have to check myself, that is one thing I'll ask myself: what am I afraid of? What is causing this rigid thinking? What fear is in me that isn't resolved? And so then I start to work on myself to figure out why I'm slipping into this mental rigid. And we know it's coming from fear. We know people are terrified. I mean, I know we have Westboro Baptist Church here in the United States, which is an awful, awful group. They show up and do all these protests, and they're just terrible. They have terrible signs. And I've watched many TED Talks on them and many different other talks about this church. And it's psychologically, when people get that rigid, it's because deep down, they typically don't believe what they say they believe. And so that fear exists. And so they're trying to get people, if my belief system can be validated by everyone else, then I'll feel better, right? And so they threaten and scare you into trying to believe what they believe so that they can self-validate themselves. When you start to see it that way, you realize how wounded people are, how wounded they are mentally, and that's why they behave the way they do. It actually has nothing to do with you. Their threats against you have nothing to do with you. It's all coming from them. And being in a place of great thinking, being in a place where you're able to read information that contradicts how you were raised is very liberating. It's not once has any of this challenged my belief in God. Not once. Again, as I said, it's just made my belief in God even stronger.
All right.
I think it can only make one's belief stronger, because, as you say, the whole element of fear is the fact that if you look at the acronym, it's false evidence appearing real.
Yep.
And that's fear. And fear is there to make you think and believe you can't achieve something. It's there to make you believe that you are less than. You know, your job is to walk towards that fear and conquer it anyway. So the very thing you're not wanting to do, that's the thing you should do.
Yeah.
So when, let's say, information like this comes up, and am I fine? Have I frozen?
You're fine now. You just froze for a second.
Okay. And it's just like that information, you know, when information comes up that makes it comfortable, it's really good to maybe just go and Google it or DuckDuckGo it, you know, check it out, see what it's about, read a little bit further. No one's saying you have to be convinced about it,
Yeah.
but at least explore what's out.
Oh no.
Mm.
My teacher.
Have we frozen?
You're good now. My teacher in India always says wife fearing. Wife fearing. Wife fearing. I love it. So I think I saw that too. Wife fearing. Wife fearing. Why? That's why I say why.
Yeah.
Wife fearing. So
Nothing to fear except fear itself. Absolutely.
All right, we're ready for the next one. So that discourage access to non-cult sources of information. Again,
missing
that
books of the
goes
Bible.
into missing books of the Bible. You know, or it goes into, you know, anything to do with, so if I were in the church, as an example, and I was venturing into some of the stuff, I've been looking into some of the more esoteric stuff that I've been looking into. Oh my God, a pastor would have a hissy fit on me. I'd probably stomp up and down and start yelling at me. Because they don't even want you to question. You can't even question it. You can't even look at the different perspectives. It's one perspective only. And that's not healthy. You should have the ability and you should have the freedom to go ahead and look at all the different perspectives and make up your own mind.
yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I saw a meme today or the other day, and it said 97% of scientists agree with those backing them. The other 3% have been kicked off social media.
Yeah, I saw that. That's actually so true. It's actually, it really is, you know. And, you know, the whole thing is, I think we must realize we are born free. You know, when we come from God or Creator, we are free. So then we incarnate into this human body where it's a lot more restricted. And, you know, the objective is to actually transcend those inner restrictions, you know, that we have to listen to someone else, that we have to do what, sure, as a child, you know, you're guided by your parents. Your parents shouldn't be giving you the steel grip. You know, I love that. I don't know if you guys ever know Khalil Gibran, who's author of The Prophet. And he's written this little chapter on children. And, you know, where he says, you know, your children aren't your children. They are life's longing for itself. And as your children, you know, as parents, we shouldn't look to give them our habits because that is from the past. The children are of the future. So we should be taking from them. It's amazing, you know, when we can understand everything we've been taught, that you've got to rule your kids with an iron fist. You got to smack their asses with a leather belt if they misbehave, you know, is so wrong. We have to really turn that around. Discipline with love, teach with love, with patience, with tolerance, all the things that we weren't given in the older generations. I mean, I know certainly my generation, oh boy, we were still very much.
Yeah, me too. I got spanked. Yeah. Well, I will say I have to brag on Stephanie because I've been close friends with her in our house, with her family. She's the best mom ever. Like you raise your son with love. Like you validate him and you talk with him, and I'm like putting my hand on you like this, but you do, and we talked about that like that, and I'm that way too. I responded better with encouragement, not with screaming and yelling, but with encouragement and soft voices. I'm very Vata that way. That's how. And it's interesting, you know, you saying that, because that's how we were laughing with her son yesterday about how many times Stephanie and I got whacked for things growing up, you know, and how different everything is.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But I think we should take a break now, just do an ad break. So we'll take a breather, grab a cup of tea, and we'll see you back in 2 minutes.
Alrighty.
Hello, hi everybody. So we are clothing design factory studio based in Cape Town, Woodstock, Cape Town. We produce this beautiful range of products from Gaia. So firstly, you know, when the Maruska comes in there, flying in by my studio with a roll of fabric, raw fabric, just the raw fabric. So this is on a roll, it's just a flat piece of fabric, nothing has happened to it yet. That's when we start the magic. We start working with our patterns, which is superbly crafted. It's literally flawless. We've not had any issues with her fit, with the way the garment gets constructed. It is unique because it's not a mass-produced garment of 100, and it's limited quantities, maximum 20 per style at a time. So in that process, each garment takes on its own unique character, because, you know, when the seamstress is busy with each one, it's a process. Each button, each thing gets sewn on by hand. You know, so from start to finish, it's a process.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, from your commercials, I actually have been buying more linen because of your
You should be speaking to Marushka about her linen, because she's actually this is actually one of her tops. It's the baby doll, and like in winter now, wear it over stuff, and in summer it is amazing. And it really does. It gets it's like we were saying on the previous ad when I was interviewing the guy that she gets her fabric from. It's like a good red wine. It gets better with age. And honestly, and it also depends on the quality of linen that you're using. Yeah. And hers is very, very high quality. And as I was actually saying in one of the other ads, linen is the highest vibrating fabric that there is.
Yep.
Not silk.
Well, you give her information. I'll put her on my channel too. We'll get her stuff out there.
Absolutely. Yay. Okay, honey. You guys fire away again with the next point.
Okay, so I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, just because some of them are slightly redundant, and I don't want to, continue to repeat stuff. So I want to go into like the really, really important points here that people really understand. So one of them is generate and use propaganda extensively. Obviously, we've been seeing that with media, just pushing out fear. And what happens is you repeat the propaganda, you repeat all this stuff, all the information over and over and over again. It does create it starts to really brainwash the person. Yeah. And they do this in church, repeating the same ideas over and over and over again. They do this in education, where they're repeating the same history, the same information over and over again. And you had a good point. It's like that repetitive, and then you regurgitate the information.
Yeah, so that's what it's interesting. I know I've talked about this on my channel, but we were up in a town here in Connecticut. And we were in an antique store, and Stephanie first found it, and I bought it. It's a history book from 1883 here in the United States, and it was sealed up, so to buy it to come home and read it. And it was interesting to see the differences between what they were teaching in 1883 versus what they taught us in the late 20th century when I was growing up 100 years later. And so you can see how the narrative shifts and change. And so if you don't believe us about especially history information, go to your local antique shops and see if you can find old school books from the 1800s and compare and see where things have shifted in the story and the propaganda has shifted. And that's part of like the hypnotic effect as well, is when you repeat something over and over and over again, it becomes imprinted on someone's mind. And so it becomes a reality. And so that's another example about why you need contrasting information. When I was a kid growing up, we had to do debate, where we were forced to in school learn the two different sides of the story and debate each other. And I don't think they teach that anymore in school. It's memorization and regurgitation. I got people email me all the time asking me, like, how do you research? And it's shocking to me that but I get it, because nowadays they're teaching us to memorize and regurgitate instead of reading all these different synopsises and then drawing your own conclusions based off the information that you're given. So you're even seeing that information control in the way that they're teaching children how to research nowadays. It's memorization and regurgitation and not actual research.
And all this, and what this is going into specifically is the propaganda. So obviously it's a fear tactic to hold you and bind you into a belief system using false information to keep you boxed in so that you are not questioning. And it keeps you in fear to question. Like, you don't want to question because you're too fearful to question. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I did question actual things in the church, or even in education. I remember going and sitting in a PPT meeting for my son because he was in the special education system. And so I would question these teachers and authority members of the school. Oh my gosh, I'd get so ridiculed. I would be asking them, why are you not teaching this and this and this and this and this? It's amazing, the curriculum that has been changed, but they would try to put me in a state of fear that my son was going nowhere and that he would never amount to anything. And so they do this to parents, even in the school. They do this to your students. They do this in the church. They do this on the media. It's everywhere. So it's to hold you and bind you in fear based off of information that's not even accurate.
Well, look at what they do in the United States. I don't know about South Africa or other countries, but here in the United States, they've made it almost mandatory for children not only to go to university, but also get their master's. And when you're in high school, the fear of God is put into you that if you don't get accepted to university, you're going to be homeless and on the street. And I grew up in a private school. I didn't even know that college or university was an option until I was in it, because it was just so ingrained. And nowadays, colleges and universities have gotten so competitive. Students and children are being run ragged with after-school activities, all this testing just to get into a university so that they can maybe have a good job, and they get into all this debt. It becomes this vicious cycle. No one is going to vocational schools anymore, where we laugh that the person that went and learned how to be a plumber is making more money than the person that has their PhD in history, because the PhD in history dude has to pay off all this. And they've gotten us into this propaganda trap that's all based off of fear. That's all based off of fear. And so we see it. It's so obvious in what we see in the mainstream world, although it gets a little bit more tricky when you get into religion, because that is the real fear. That's why they took a lot of the missing books of the Bible. They took out it. Jesus is speaking about reincarnation very openly. Absolutely. So what did the church do? They said, no, you die and you either go to heaven or hell. So now you've got the fear of God. That if you, like Stephanie dealt with that. I know you've talked about that before, where she didn't even want to drive because she was afraid if she had a car accident, she was going to go to hell. But if people understood that Yahshua, the Christ, actually taught reincarnation in the way that the Eastern philosophy teaches as these experiences, you wouldn't fear death. Yep.
Exactly.
You wouldn't be vulnerable.
And it's so liberating when you break out of that fear.
It's an understanding, for me, the most beautiful understanding with all of that really is we are not human beings trying to be spiritual. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Seriously, let that sink in. Because if you can turn that around and realize it's not you trying to seek and trying to find and trying to get back to God the way that the Bible and religion has taught us, but you really understand it is you that has chosen to come to earth in this body in this life for this moment in time to experience certain lessons, experiences. And the very thing that your body is experiencing and going through is the things that your soul needs through which to expand. So we expand through challenges, we expand through hard times, we expand through falling down. I mean, I think life is so beautiful. If we just look at babies, how many times does that baby fall down before it walks? And here we are, all of us that are able to walk, walking adults. That baby never once gave up. Never once gave up, never once gave up. It knew it was going to walk and find its way. It's the same as that, the human spirit. We're going to find our way through this. We're going to understand what this life is about. We're going to understand all these restrictions, because through these restrictions, expansion is born. So when you feel that restricted, like you did, Stephanie, so squished up in that horrible little whatever it was, and suddenly that crack, and the moment that the light came in or was released, whichever way you choose to look at it, then that was the moment of your liberation and the moment of complete bliss, that whole spiritual bliss where you know what you know, what you know, and no one can take it away. And it goes beyond reading any spiritual book. And I don't want to hammer the Bible or anything else. I really want to just say, obviously because more it's to our Western religion, but it surpasses that. It's an understanding that you're living the teachings.
Mm-hmm.
You are you automatically living them. You don't have to train yourself to do it. And that verse says that. So therefore, today I have to do this because I only got to keep myself here. Yes, maybe for a moment in time, you do need that. Ask yourself why you need the restriction. You need restriction in order to expand. So what can you be expanding into?
There's a teacher that Stephanie and I both follow, and she said something once that I just love it. And we're talking about how the information, you talk about light coming in, how the information kind of keeps you in this cage. And it's like you feel like you're locked in this cage. And then one day when you start to realize there is liberation, that light starts to come through, you realize that cage was never locked in the first place. You always had the ability to open the door and walk outside. And that moment, even when you haven't fully broken free of the programming, when you realize in that one moment that cage isn't locked, and that you can push the door open, is that moment of empowerment. She also says Mother Earth will always catch you when you fall. Don't be afraid to fall, because Mother Earth will always catch you. You're always going to be caught when you fall. So don't be afraid.
As the baby knows. As the baby knows.
As the baby knows, Mother Earth is always. When I was a little girl, we used to always go skiing with my dad for our spring break. We go to Colorado to snow ski. That's the one winter sport I know how to do. And it cracks me up because have you ever seen ski slopes? Like adults get the poles, right? You have the poles with your skis. Well, little kids, when they ski, they don't ski with poles because they're so low to the ground that if they fell, they have their little jackets on and their hands are just kind of out. And they're just kind of skiing down, but they're not afraid. They're not afraid to fall. Exactly. And they're just no poles. They're just going on down the hill. And if they fall, they'll get back up again. And I think about a lot when she talked about like Mother Earth will catch those little kids on their skis with no poles, nothing, just going down the hill on their skis. Mother Earth will catch you when you fall and you'll get right back up again.
Sometimes you have to put your perspective as that kid again.
Absolutely.
What was my perspective when I was a child? Because I think a lot of us, when we were children, we just knew things, and we had no fear. What happens is we grow up, we get older, we're listening to the outside sources, and it starts to taint what we already know. So sometimes we got to bring ourselves back to that little boy or that little girl that we were and just have that inner knowing again and remind ourselves why we're here.
Exactly. I'm just interested in just checking some of the comments again. Let me just see who this is here. Someone's going to get.
I take it? I want to take it. Wait.
Deborah Faith is accusing us of being New Age. Kim Kushler, I was deep in New Age and had a decision to make and realized demons are connected to the information, demons are connected to going deeper, and it's all for me. I don't know what that's about.
So you're
But
programmed.
honestly,
You're an this is a good example of information control.
there we go, right? But what I'm saying is, when you're talking about New Age, honestly, you know, that right there is mind control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have no
There's
idea
no such
what
thing as New Age. There's no
you
such
are.
thing.
You have no idea what you are speaking about, Deborah Faith. What we are talking about is the most ancient principles that have existed since the beginning of time. And you telling us you're talking New Age. Are you, what part of this are you not getting? Honestly, this is the stuff that makes me frustrated. What part of what we are saying are you not getting? What is New Age about this? We are talking principles that have been imposed upon us. We are talking God's natural law. Mm-hmm. We are talking being a free, sovereign human being. And if you think that is New Age, then I say to you, bye-bye. You've just earned yourself a block. Bam.
Well, and Deborah Faith, that's her name, I will say thank you for giving us an example of what information and mind control looks like, because that is what it looks like, the way she reacted. And I'll tell you, I've been working in this industry with yoga for like 15 years. Not one person I know who's a yoga teacher or a Reiki master or any type of healing modality calls this New Age. Only people who have been programmed to think call it New Age. I never call it New Age. My teacher, I've never heard you call it New Age, Shanti. You work in this industry. We don't call it. If you guys want to call it New Age, that's a red flag that they've been programmed by a demonic force called the church. Yeah. So
and you know what? It was programmed like this. They were planning for this. They infiltrated the Eastern philosophies and everything like this. They brought it, they westernized it, they made it ego orientated. I can understand. Some people actually fall in that trap. I call it the spirit trap. It's an ego trap. It's like a lot of New Agers, not like us that actually practice it, and have a relationship with God. The New Agers are these spiritual people that thinks they're the ones that has to sort out everything. They're the ones that have to deal with everything. You know, it's I. And the universe. But there's no God. You know, it's like they like form the relationship, and we know our higher self is what connects us with God. But it's almost like they don't go beyond that connection. So it goes back into the ego. So there's this ego trap in New Age where they use the old teachings to get people lured in, just like they use the Bible to get people lured in with the beautiful teachings, and then hold them up with the Bible, it would be guilt and fear. With the New Age, it would be ego, I. And that's why
I went to India to study. Because I saw that. And that's why I went to India. I know that's why I studied to pick what lineage I wanted to study on. I'm very, I know a lot of the really good teachers out there from my lineage are not the famous ones. They're the really, so that is true. And there's a humility that exists within the true teachings of the Eastern philosophy. Yeah. And I'm sorry for those who are confused about Eastern philosophy. Now, we know our geography might be a little off, but from my understanding, Yahshua was not a white guy from Detroit. He was Eastern. So
he was born in the desert. Where are you going to find a guy with blonde hair, blue eyes, walking around in the desert, guys? Come on. He was an
Eastern. And if you read the missing, that's why they don't want you reading the missing books of the Bible, because if you read the missing books of the Bible, you would see that they mirror the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali perfectly. You would see that they mirror all the Upanishads, all the Bhagavad Gita. You would see that it's the same teaching, but they want to divide us. They don't want us all to have the same teaching and be unified, to understand that every experience is an individual experience. We were doing a live the other night, and some person asked us if her new spiritual teacher was going to change the world. And I stopped her right there. I can't remember what she said, paraphrasing it, that no, you want to change yourself. That's the true spiritual teaching, is you're looking to change yourself. That's it. Because that's all you have is you. And it's like one thing that the Eastern philosophy and spiritual practices have taught me is, yes, in the church, they tell you, are you sure you believe in Jesus? Or you have to invite the Holy Spirit in? No, my friends, you already had it in you.
It's
What
always
you
been there.
what
You
you
just
seek,
have to realize it.
yeah, what you
Yeah.
seek is already in you. It's already there. The Holy Spirit's it was there from the moment your sperm hit the egg. That's that light, that flash. You wouldn't be
Inviting something in is a warning sign. Inviting anything in is a warning sign. I mean, it's not, you can invite something to come have a chat with you, or maybe come give you, but inviting something within, I mean, no, that's a warning sign for me. I mean, it's already there.
Yeah, I text her one night. I was like, holy shit, Stephanie. I was like, you know how they do this big prayer in church where you have to invite Jesus into your heart? That sounds like a demonic ritual to me, where you're actually inviting in something that shouldn't be like I was like, that sounds very, now that I'm aware.
I can attest to what that is, because when I was in the church, I was the angriest person. I'm not the same person I was. And that was the false sense of me. The true me is not that person. But the more I invited Jesus into my heart, the more angrier I got. The less control I had over myself. And I was losing more and more and more control. And I know my soul had to go through that for a lot of reasons. And a big reason is to present this. The way I look at it is, if people want to argue and say we're New Age and we're demonic or whatever, fine. I don't care. It's not my business what people think of me. The thing is, we're trying to lead people to water so that they can regain their own sovereignty. If they want to drink the water, great. If they don't, then that's not our problem. That's theirs. And that they have a lot of work to do on themselves.
And I will say, too, I'm not ever on any Christian's channel sending abusive messages to them.
No.
I'm never doing that. So why are you doing it to us? You have to question yourself at that point. And I will say, if you're freaked out because what Morné said and I said too, you have to look at the name Jesus again. That wasn't the Christ name.
Zeus.
Hail Zeus.
That's
and
what it means.
The J sound, the letter J, was not a letter that existed back in those days.
I did hours and hours of research on the name Jesus.
So why would they change Yahshua, which was his real name, Yahshua? Why would they take his real name and change it to something completely different? Yeah. This is, and again, guys, all this information is out there. It's all out there. So if Jesus was not the name of the Christ, if his name was Yahshua, and you say a prayer to invite Jesus into your heart, what are you actually inviting into your heart? You have to question that now. Why is it? And as we were saying, you were saying, yes, the heavy fundamentalist Christians are the ones that send me death threats.
Are the very ones angry and miserable
that try to hurt us.
Super angry.
That sounds like demonic possession to me.
Yeah.
So your behavior is proving the bite model correct. It's proving this all correct. And so it doesn't hurt to just research. The J sound did not exist then. So where did the name Jesus come from? Now you have to go from there. Why did every single woman in the Gospels, why were they called Mary? Why? It wasn't the number one baby name in the baby book that year. I guarantee you that. Like, why? It's because Mary, because they stripped them of their real names. The name Mary was like a Jane Doe. They stripped, Magdalene's name was not Mary Magdalene. It was just Magdalene. What we found something that Mother Mary was actually Alma Mari. She had a I would listen, if y'all want to read a really fun missing book of the Bible, the Acts of Philip, because his wife Bethany, Mary of Bethany, whatever, probably Bethany was probably her real name. She was quite a hoot, and she was quite the little social butterfly. Like, I would love to have martinis with that woman. So these women, they stripped all the women of their personalities and of their power. And Yeshua worked with women. Magdalene was his counterpart. They taught together. She was the one that carried the alabaster jar to anoint him. That meant that he saw her as spiritually above him. And so you have to, this is all critical thinking skills, guys. Why would Yeshua ask a woman to anoint his feet if women aren't supposed to be leaders in the church? Why would Yeshua, you have to start, why would they change Yeshua's name to Jesus when the J sound didn't even exist? These are things you have to start questioning.
Also, too, this behavior where we get these, we're like being accused of whatever, New Age or serving demonics and stuff like that. This is a behavior that abusers use. It's like possessive.
It's gaslighting too.
Yes, gaslighting. So my question is, if God is an all-loving God, why is God so possessive? because you can't be narcissistic and loving at the same time. It doesn't exist. They're two polar opposites. That is a narcissistic God. The God I serve is loving and non-judgmental. So ask yourself, why is God being possessive of me? That's kind of a quality of the devil, don't you think? Because the devil.
And that's a human quality. That's a human quality. It's a fear-based quality. God would have no reason to be possessive of God's entire creation.
Yeah. That's Luciferian. It's almost like the Lucies are trying to get your soul away from you. That's almost what that sounds like to me. Yeah. You know, so these are just.
Carry on, sorry, Bryce.
This just comes back to information control again. If you're triggered by what we're saying, then obviously you've been heavily mind controlled through information control. Because all we're saying is research. Why? Ask why. Why is his name Jesus and not Yeshua? Why? Why did Abraham almost sacrifice his son? Why? That doesn't sound like the God that I serve. That sounds like what they were doing on those islands down below Florida.
Why was Jesus crucified?
That's a human sacrifice.
Yeah, what kind of ritual is that?
Nobody can pay for your karma for you.
No.
You have to go through your karma. That's your
everything
privilege.
About the church and about cults and about education and about any of these things is all external based. It's external knowing. And what we need to really do is we need to really look within and figure out the truth from within. We don't need external sources telling us who, how, why we should be. We should be looking at, and like you say, if we don't know wrong from right, then we really need to check in with our moral compass, right?
Yeah, if you don't know right from wrong, you don't need religion, you need morals. And I will say too, I'm an aunt, and I have my niece and my nephew are getting older now. My youngest niece is just a little over a year. Girl doesn't even know how to go to the toilet by herself. She certainly does not know how to read the Bible, but she sees God. She sees God. She doesn't need anybody to tell her who God is. She sees God. So that's that beautiful. And like I said, she's still in diapers. She doesn't even know how to wipe her own ass yet, but she sees God. So why do we need a being telling us what God is and what is right from wrong when we are born knowing this?
I knew things about God, Yeshua, when I was a little 3, 4, 5-year-old girl, because I saw in that realm, I heard in that realm, and nobody ever taught me anything. And I would have people go, how did you know that? Well, because I was told that in this, I would talk to the spirits in the spiritual realm when I was a little girl. I didn't need, anybody telling me who God was then. I already knew who God was then. So it goes back to that. Go back to that inner child, that fearless inner child, that inner knowing that we are born with because of the spark of light, because we are a fractal of that light.
Agreed. I must say that's why my faith is so strong, because I can still remember me and God speaking before I went to the church. So I was already connected with God, and I kept that memory, and it was always with me. And I feel like that's a blessing in its disguise as well. But I also just wanted to add with all, why is Mary the same name? Why is certain things? I believe in archetypes, avatars, so to say, if you want to say it. I believe in, if we talk about reincarnation, I do believe that certain souls like Yeshua was the reincarnation of a very strong soul that was able to take a lot of our, not sin, so to say, but actually just lift a little bit of the karma on the earth, maybe, because he was one. At some spiritual level, we all had an agreement because we're all one. So, there's so much truth and non-truth in all of this. And there's a certain story that's intertwined in everything like that. And that's why we need discernment. That's why we need to hear all the information we can hear and find our own truth. But for some people, that's distraction. I mean, for some people, being a Christian is a safe place for them. They won't kill anybody.
I know.
So I just wanted to say that there's, for our viewers, and I know there's some people that think we misunderstood them, but actually I do understand them. And for some people, they are with us right now. They're not Christian, they're not New Age. They're like on the fence. It's like, where do we fit in? We're
you don't have to fit in. That's the thing, is like, you're already perfect the way you are.
Let's stop putting boxes in any place anymore.
You don't have to seek to find a label of defining yourself as, what's that Krishnamacharya quote? The minute I call myself a yogi, I am not. I am not. The minute I call myself something, that is what I am not.
Exactly.
I mean, I want to like hug everybody and be like, you don't have to be anything.
You don't need a label.
Just be you. Just be you. Because God made you. So why is you not good enough if God made you? Don't worry about what other people in your church or your religion or your community or your education system or whatever are telling you have to be. They're just human beings. They're just as lost as all of us. And she knows who she is. So, just don't worry about labeling yourself anything. Just be you. I guarantee you, once you just settle into being you, you'll find so much happiness. Like I said, that cage isn't even locked. Just push open the door.
Exactly. She has to be part of the show. She just has to be.
Knowledge is power. When we just, it's so important to be able to look beyond our boundaries and the things we talk with. I spent time in the Middle East with a friend, and I wasn't a tourist or whatever. I was with actually a family, a good friend of mine. She's Jordanian, and I was there with the family for 2 months in the Middle East. It is amazing, the sense of spirituality, the love of Jesus that these people have. It's nothing like we see on TV or the propaganda that goes along with that. It's amazing. So when you see different cultures and how they enjoy what they're doing, how they do it as well, everyone really, at the end of the day, our hearts are the same. We love, we thrive with love. We need food. We need love. We need water. As a human being, we all have our basic needs, and that's the one thing. So does it really matter how we choose to worship the Creator that has created us? And I mean, that I think is at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Do you have a good heart? You'll know each other's hearts. If not, move on.
I mean, look at kids again. Kids are a good example of that. You can have a classroom full of all different races, the 2 different genders. You'll have a Hindu kid, a Muslim kid, a Christian kid. They're not going to care. They're just going to play together. They're just going to play together, right? And that's what humans need to do. Instead of trying to control people by trying to get them to conform to the way you think, which is, again, another form of information control, just love each other. I mean, Sri Swami Satchidananda talks about that so beautifully in his commentary on the sutras. The minute you start to rediscover your soul inside of you, you see that same soul behind the eyes of every person you meet. And the judgment just dissipates, and the hatred because of being different dissipates, because you see the same soul behind the eyes of other people too. But first you have to know your own soul. First you have to get, we are one. We are all just walking each other home.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Indeed. And that's at the end of the day, that's what it's about. So ladies and gents, as always, when we have fun, time flies. I'm so happy to have had you 2 here again, and we look forward to next Monday, where we go into the tea of the bite. We're gonna be biting this thing off in bite-sized chunks. And decoding it and kind of rehashing everything. So thank you so much. Do you girls have anything to say in closing before we bid you a beautiful rest of your day?
Just know that you are perfectly made just the way you are. You don't need another human being to tell you otherwise. The God you seek is already in you. That Holy Spirit never left you. It's already there.
Absolutely.
Don't let fear dictate.
You've always been anointed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't let fear dictate how you act, how you see yourself, treat others and control, take control of you. Because I've been there, I've done that, I've been through that rodeo, and it's not fun. And it's no way anybody should be living. And once you break free of that, it is the best thing that will ever happen to you, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Morné, and Bryce and Steph for... And I see, Bryce, are we doing Tartaria on Wednesday, right?
I'm down for it. Let's do it. It's my favorite
Yeah,
session coming up that we're doing. So
absolutely. We tend to miss a few Wednesdays here and there.
life's been crazy.
With those two global gallivanters sitting at the bottom of my screen, all over the show. And so they forced us to miss Wednesdays that had absolutely nothing to do with me. Speak to them. Wonderful. Okay. Take good care, everybody. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Please give us a like, a share, subscribe. Leave us some comments. Share. Always knowledge is power. Just get people thinking. We opening up to a different reality here on Earth. It's wonderful. And so good to have all of you joining us on this beautiful journey. Mwah. God bless you all. See you on Wednesday. Ta-da.